Welcome back to Growth by the Numbers, the show where we break down what it really takes to grow smarter, scale efficiently, and turn numbers into strategy. I'm your host, Tyler Briggs, and today we're continuing our series on the pillars of a business. Last week in episode 2, we talked about the first pillar, right, marketing and lead generation, and how FP&A brings structure, analytics, and discipline to one of the company's biggest investments. Today, we're diving into that second pillar, right? That next step, operations, right? And delivery. Because once a lead comes in, operations is where the promise gets delivered. It's where the customer experience, efficiency, and profitability all collide, and where strong FP&A can make one of the biggest impacts on a company's success. So every company has great ideas, but execution is what separates the good from the great. And execution lives inside of our operations, right? Operations, the engine, right? It's the engine of your business. It's where your product or your service is actually delivered to customers. It's where the customer feels the experience. It's where the business either earns or loses trust. But operations isn't just about getting the work done. It's about how efficiently it gets done. So when I look at a business that scales successfully, they all share one trait. They treat operations like a living, measurable system, not a black box, right? They track capacity. They track performance. They track cost per output. So that's where FP&A comes in. We help translate those operational outcomes into financial insight, connecting things like service times, labor utilization, and job completion rates directly to margins and profitability. The difference between being busy and being productive. So let's break down how FP&A supports operations. Right? There's 3 core ideas where finance and operations intersect in a powerful way. Right? Efficiency. How well the business converts input into output. Service quality. How consistent and reliable is the delivery process? How do the dollars line up behind the effort, right? Margin control. So when finance helps measure and analyze these 3 areas, it gives operators real-time visibility into performance, not just at the end of the month, but while it's happening. That's how you move from reactive to proactive management. So efficiency, doing more with what you have, right? Efficiency is that heartbeat of the operations. Every business faces the same question. How do we get more done without simply adding more people or cost? So FP&A helps answers that, right? Through data, things like job cycle time, revenue per technician, cost per job, or production yield, we can identify bottlenecks and wasted capacity, right? So for example, your HVAC company completes 1,000 jobs in a month, but 150 are callbacks. That's not a sales problem. It's an operational efficiency problem. So FP&A highlights those patterns. We turn raw activity into insight so that operation leaders can fix the process, not just work harder. Efficiency gains often drive the most profitable growth because they increase output without increasing overhead. Service quality, what the numbers reveal. Right now, let's talk about that. It might sound soft, but it's measurable. Every service-based business can track metrics like customer satisfaction, first-time completion rate, warranty or rework percentage, customer retention, and repeat rate. Here's the thing. Service quality directly ties into cost and margin. A poor first-time completion rate means more truck rolls, more labor hours, more overhead for the same dollar of revenue. That's a hidden drain. It's a hidden drain most operators miss until FP&A maps it out. By putting service quality into measurable, trackable terms, we connect customer experience directly to financial performance. So when quality improves, margin improves, and cash flow stabilizes. So the third piece is margin control. Operations drive margin every day on every job. But operators often focus on task completion, not financial contribution. That's where FP&A brings the bridge, right? We analyze labor utilization. Are we billing enough productive hours? Marginal cost variance. Are supply costs consistent with the estimate? Gross margin per service line. Which jobs or products are most profitable? This visibility allows leadership to make smarter pricing and investment decisions. If we can see that one department consistently earns a 40% gross margin and another only earns 22%, we can ask why and adjust accordingly. Margin control isn't about cutting, it's about understanding. You can't improve what you can't see. But now we've got to turn that data into strategy, right? Here's where it really gets interesting. When FP&A starts tracking these operational metrics, something powerful happens. You begin to forecast operational performance and not just financial results. That's how companies scale intelligently, right? So for example, your average revenue per technician and your historical utilization rate come together. You can now forecast capacity. You can plan when to hire, when to train, and how many jobs the company can handle next quarter before you hit that ceiling. That's how operations planning connects to budgeting and cash flow. So every decision from adding a truck to opening a new branch has operational and financial impact. FP&A helps quantify that impact so leadership can invest with confidence. Right? So what's the power of this operational insight, right? Operational insight is one of the most valuable advantages a company can develop. When finance and operations are aligned, leadership can anticipate capacity issues before they become bottlenecks. They can spot margin erosion early, forecast hiring and capital needs accurately, and we can maintain service quality while growing fast. That's how businesses scale profitably, by seeing the full picture. I've seen companies double the revenue while improving margin simply because they use FP&A insights to tighten operations. They didn't grow and then fix efficiency. They grew because they fixed efficiency, right? Let me give you an example, right? So I've worked with a few different organizations here recently, and we started bumping their revenues. However, their margins just started to drop. Right on the surface, things looked great. Revenue's up, not hitting the numbers. Thought it was a pricing issue. But as we dug into the FP&A analysis, we found something else. Their average job completion time increased. So technicians were spending more time on each job, driving up labor costs and cutting into the profitability. Once we highlighted that data, operations adjusted scheduling and implemented better pre-job prep and reduced travel inefficiency. Within 2 months, the average job time fell by 15%. Margins rebounded and cash flow stabilized. So that's FP&A and operations working hand in hand, connecting data to real measurable improvement. Give you another example. Recently, I was working with this local organization specializing in new home landscape, hardscape designs, right? We're putting in new landscapes. Simple tweak in understanding their sales process. From the time that they were knocking doors, qualifying leads, getting appointments, to the time that they were closing that lead, closing the appointment, and getting sales. Found a couple things. They had gone through a couple other consulting groups. However, what they were failing to understand and what they weren't really seeing were different utilization rates or different rates, different metrics that would help understand their process. Just a simple tweak in sales. So they work with a local credit union. They have financing rates that only go out to 5 years, 48 months, 60 months. And some of them took very high qualified individuals, high credit qualifying individuals. And all we did is we helped them understand that their booking rate to conversion was low. 60% of those that were closing were seeking financing and were qualifying for that financing. However, almost 80% of their leads were asking for financing and moved on from that. So we were missing 20% out of their total lead volume because they couldn't qualify their financing needs. We partnered with a different finance organization, a different financing company, and we helped bring a more stabilized and efficient sales process to the consumer. Now we're capturing that additional 20% in their lead volume. We're increasing and almost doubling their revenue in a month. Actually, it's only been about a week and we've doubled their revenue in a week, all by simply taking the right metrics, developing the right tools, and implementing them swiftly. Time will only tell what this company will do. That is FP&A and operations coming together to bring growth. They've spent $0 on additional ad spend, $0 on additional overhead. All they've done is changed a few simple things in their process, and they will go to 10x their revenue in a 12-month period. No problem. So let's recap, right? Every business has pillars. Operations and delivery is one of the most critical. It's where promises become reality and where profitability is either built or lost. FP&A plays a vital role here, connecting financial data to operational reality. We help measure efficiency. Are we doing more with what we have? Service quality. Are we delivering consistency and excellence? Margin control. Are efforts translating to profitability? When finance and operations work together, the company moves as one, right? As one, aligned, informed, and capable of scaling profitably, not just quickly. Operational insight isn't just nice to have. It's the foundation of sustainable growth. So that's it for today's episode of Growth by the Numbers. We've covered how FP&A connects the dots between efficiency, service, and margin control, and why operation insight is one of the most powerful levers a company can pull to drive profitability. Next week, we'll dive into the third pillar, sales and revenue generation. We'll explore how FP&A drives clarity to sales performance, pricing strategy, and revenue forecast, and how that drives sustainable top-line growth. If you found this episode valuable, share it with an operations leader, business owner who's scaling their company and wants more control over their margins. And if you're ready to build operational clarity into your business, visit growthbythenumbers.com to learn how we help companies bring strategy, structure, and finance precision to their growth journey. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, growth isn't luck. It's planned, measured, and managed.